April 25, 1986, was a crisp spring day in Pripyat, Ukraine. The Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant loomed on the horizon, its 4 reactors a testament to Soviet ambition. Reactor Number 4 was slated for a safety test that night, a simulation of a power outage to ensure the turbine could keep coolant pumps running long enough for backup generators to kick in. In our reality, this test would unleash a catastrophe. But in this tale, a single voice altered the course of history. In the control room, the air buzzed with tension. Anatoly Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer, barked orders, his gruff demeanor masking the pressure he felt. The test was overdue, delayed by a power grid demand earlier that day, and the clock ticked toward midnight. Operators hunched over consoles, their faces illuminated by the flickering green glow of screens. Among them was Elena Kovalenko, a 28-year-old engineer with a sharp mind and a reputation for quiet persistence. Elena had joined Chernobyl 2 years prior, fresh from Kyiv Polytechnic Institute. She wasn't loud or confrontational, but her colleagues respected her meticulous nature. That night, as the team prepared to lower the reactor's power, she noticed something odd. The logs from the previous shift showed a slight irregularity in the control rod system, a brief spike in reactivity that had gone unreported. It wasn't enough to halt operations, but it nagged at her. She cross-checked the data against the RBMK reactor's design specs, her fingers tracing lines in a worn manual. "Comrade Dyatlov," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of machinery. "The control rods. There's a potential issue with the insertion sequence." Dyatlov turned, his brow furrowing. "What issue? We've run this system 100 times. Elena held up her notes. "The graphite tips. When they drop, they could briefly increase fission before the boron shuts it down. If the reactor's already unstable from the power drop, it might..." She hesitated, choosing her words. "It might surge." The room went quiet. Dyatlov's temper was legendary, and the junior staff braced for an outburst. But something in Elena's calm certainty gave him pause. He snatched the manual from her hands, scanning the pages. The RBMK's design flaw wasn't a secret among engineers. Whispers of its quirks had circulated for years, but no one had dared challenge it during a live operation. Dyatlov cursed under his breath, then barked, "Get me the shift logs, now." The next hour was chaos. Operators pulled records, ran diagnostics, and debated in hurried tones. Elena's theory held weight. The test conditions, low power, high xenon poisoning, and a sudden rod insertion, could indeed trigger a runaway reaction. Dyatlov, though reluctant, saw the risk. He picked up the phone and dialed the plant director, Viktor Bryukhanov, waking him from a fitful sleep. "We're postponing," Dyatlov said, his voice tight. "There's a problem." Bryukhanov arrived at 2 a.m., bleary-eyed but authoritative. He listened as Elena explained, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The director's face darkened. Canceling the test meant admitting imperfection, a political risk in the Soviet system. But a failure during the test could be far worse. "Verify it," he ordered. "Bring in an expert." By dawn, a physicist named Mikhail Volkov arrived from Kyiv. A wiry man with a penchant for bluntness, he'd long criticized the RBMK's design in academic circles. He pored over Elena's data, nodding grimly. "She's right," he said. "You're sitting on a powder keg. The graphite tips are a flaw, always have been. Fix it, or you'll regret it." The test was scrapped. Word crept up the chain to Moscow, where bureaucrats grumbled but couldn't ignore Volkov's credentials. Over the next 6 months, Chernobyl became a hive of activity. Engineers retrofitted Reactor 4, replacing the graphite-tipped control rods with fully boron ones to ensure a clean shutdown. New sensors were installed to monitor reactivity in real time, and the staff underwent rigorous retraining. Elena, thrust into the spotlight, worked alongside Volkov to oversee the changes. When the safety test finally ran in November 1987, it was anticlimactic. The turbine spun down, the pumps whirred, and the backup generators clicked on without a hitch. The control room erupted in relieved applause. Dyatlov, ever the curmudgeon, gave Elena a curt nod, his version of praise. Pripyat's residents, blissfully unaware of how close they'd come to disaster, went about their lives. The Ferris wheel turned, children played in the streets, and the plant's hum remained a steady backdrop. The aftermath reshaped the region. Chernobyl's success became a propaganda win for the Soviet Union, proof of its ability to adapt and innovate. Nuclear power, rather than a pariah, gained a cautious boost. Elena Kovalenko rose to prominence, eventually heading a task force to audit and improve RBMK reactors across the bloc. By 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved, the nuclear program stood as one of its few enduring legacies, thanks in part to her quiet courage. Pripyat thrived into the 21st century. The town expanded, its modernist apartments filled with families drawn by stable jobs at the plant. The exclusion zone never formed. Instead, the surrounding forests remained a haven for wildlife, untouched by radiation scars. Tourists came not for ruins, but for a glimpse of a living Soviet relic, its concrete towers softened by time. Yet a shadow lingered. Engineers like Elena knew the victory was fragile. The RBMK's flaws had been tamed, not erased, and human error was an ever-present risk. In quiet moments, she'd walk the plant's perimeter, gazing at the cooling towers against the sky. The disaster hadn't happened, but its ghost haunted her, a reminder of what might have been. Mikhail Volkov, now retired, wrote a memoir titled The Near Flame, crediting Elena as the spark that saved us. She brushed off the praise, insisting it was a team effort. But in Pripyat's central square, a small plaque eventually appeared, etched with her name and the date, April 26, 1986. It read simply, "For vigilance." The world moved on, its attention shifting to new crises. Chernobyl faded into the background, a footnote of triumph rather than tragedy. But for those who'd been in that control room, the memory burned bright. A night when disaster loomed and humanity blinked first.